Hi, everybody. Okay, thank you all. I'm going to take the time to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion from the perspective of Al-Akhawain University. And I think most of you know us, but I'll spend also a bit just to introduce the university. So just to give you a sense about AUI, for those of you who are not that familiar, we're a public Moroccan university, not-for-profit, and the mission is quite aspirational, I'm sure as many of your missions are, to educate future citizen leaders of Morocco and the world through a globally oriented English language liberal arts curriculum based on the American system. The university enhances Morocco and engages the world through leading-edge educational and research programs, including continuing and executive education, upholds the highest academic and ethical standards, and promotes equity and social responsibility. So this is our mission, and I think we're all very proud of it at AUI. If you visit our campus, this is around and displayed everywhere. An important second part is the vision. AUI has a strong vision to be a beacon in the Middle East and Africa as a leading liberal arts model university adapted to 21st century knowledge and skills. And we really focus on value on investment, not return necessarily, but what is the lifelong value of an education, and specifically a liberal arts education, to a student? And we feel that that is an important distinction, not just the money you're going to make in your life as you graduate, but how is your life going to be better? In terms of international quality, we've really succeeded a lot, especially in the last decade, at achieving international accreditations. So starting in 2009, our language center received CEA accreditation, and then across the different programs, we have most recently achieved Netchie accreditation. Netchie is the New England Commission on Higher Education. It's one of the 8 regional accreditors in the United States. And if you are an American-oriented institution like ours, this is the gold standard. To have an American accreditation at the institutional level is very, very important for us. And we recently just did our 5-year review, and we had generally good things that they said. We'll see if we'll be renewed for 5 or 10 years more. I'm confident we will be renewed. But amongst the 6 challenges that the Netchie Commission highlighted for us, one of them was diversity, equity, and inclusion. That there are some things going on at our university that need some focus, that need some help. And this was both in terms of internal diversity. Of course, Morocco is a diverse country by itself, but also in terms of international students. So the point of my talk today is to be looking at what we're trying to do to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to improve it at our institution across time. We believe strongly, sorry, this is a bit small, but we believe strongly as well in the transformative experience that we have at AUI. So the educational program itself is pretty packed and pretty rich. It's a liberal arts model. You have market-oriented majors, so not philosophy necessarily, not that there's anything wrong with studying philosophy by itself, but our degrees are more like business administration or communication. Students have to do civic engagement. They have a 60-hour community service requirement and service learning program. They must have an internship, and they must have a capstone to graduate. There's also the co-curricula, the student clubs, athletics, leadership experiences that contribute to their education. The support is there in terms of mental and physical health. We have counseling, a health center, and so on. There's a first-year experience to help first-year students kind of acclimate to the university, and then there's ongoing mentoring and tutoring. Every student, when they come to AUI, is assigned a mentor to help them, especially in that first year, but into the second year and beyond. And then there's tutoring and writing center and all that. And the international dimension, the part that we're here to talk about today, is very important. We have study abroad, we have international students, faculty, and staff at AUI, and we also have a lot of international online opportunities. That internationalization at a distance is something that we're trying to build up more. I know that we have several colleagues who have virtual universities and Pegaso, where that is something that's more and more important. So just to step back a bit, yeah? Sorry? The voice? Okay. Let's see, is there a microphone somehow off? Yes, we should activate the audio. That would be helpful. Can they hear me now? And I'll just start over from the very beginning. No. Do they hear us now? Okay, test. Can you hear me if you're online? No? No? I'm not sure. Should we, do we need to restart something or? Yeah, I think so. Okay. I mean, because it's, when I opened up the thing, yes, I saw the microphone was off. I don't know, Abdurrafi is actually with me in the Office of International Programs with me. Okay. Does that help some? Abdurrafi?
Do you hear now?
Anybody? Abdurrafi, do you hear us now? Anybody else? Should I continue, do you think, or what do you think?
Yeah, we will. No, they don't hear. Do you hear now?
Do you guys hear? I'm trying to talk, I'm just talking nonsense. Any testing?
Do you hear now?
Testing. Testing.
It is, but it does not do guys. But we can't hear the. Now they are hearing me. Mi scusi, puoi aiutarmi, no? Perché da qui mi sentono adesso, da lì il presentatore non li sentono. Non lo sentono. Oni ma podprl spočne, da tam na unemle na mic.
From your computer?
And you open the mic?
Yeah, I did, yeah. The mic is on here. Now it's okay? Okay, maybe you just had to turn this thing. Okay, good. Okay, thank you very much. I'm glad, Abdurrafi. Good. Again, Abdurrafi at AUI is in the international office with me. Okay, so just to take a couple things about theory, one of the things that we assert about AUI is that we're a born global institution. This is something that frames what I think about the OIP, that we were, from the very beginning, was an organization oriented internationally that would expand and exhibit international business prowess and performance from the beginning. And I think this is true in AUI's case because we were very internationally engaged from the beginning, a number of active partners, faculty, and so on. We have, throughout our institution, had a strong global outlook. We have tried to differentiate ourselves in the market a little bit, and we have tried to become more and more advanced. And this has all been very helpful for us at AUI in terms of achieving, or at least striving towards, comprehensive internationalization. Of course, you can't really achieve it completely, but we are working hard to have international perspectives infused throughout the teaching, research, and service of our university. I do believe that AUI has this kind of built into our thinking, our ethos and values, and touches on everything that we do. So some of the main aspects that are involved here are the language or languages of instruction. For us, English is the language of instruction, but I'll talk in a minute, it is maybe more complicated than that. The student, faculty, and staff all have a general composition that is international, especially our faculty, I would say, is quite international. There's no faculty that I think of who doesn't have an international profile, even if it's not just about nationality. Of course, I'm an American, and Karim is a Moroccan, but he's more international than me by a lot, you know. So we have a very strong international profile. That's true. That's true. But it's many more things than that, of course, too. I mean, the outlook and mentality of our staff and our faculty is very international. The curriculum and co-curriculum must be international. Classes must bring in international perspectives. The co-curriculum itself must be internationalized. Governance, quality assurance, I already talked about that a little bit. That's the accreditation for us has been a huge factor in our internationalization. We will not be where we're at now without that. And international relationships, we have tons of partners. We've had many from the beginning. We have probably 70 active exchange partners and more like 300, you know, a lot of us have MOUs that are not exactly doing a lot of things, but they're still active, they're still there, and the campus internationalization. So just a little bit about our results. One of the things we're very proud of is our international study abroad rate. 75% of our students study abroad at some point for a summer or a semester. It's quite high. And we don't do that with a mandate. There's no mandate at our university for students to study abroad. Some universities have that. Goucher College and others around the world have it, but we don't. We have a lot of, as I said, agreements, and our staff are broadly international, and the office I manage, international affairs, is, I would say, quite active, especially in the mobility aspect. And we, as I mentioned, will need to work more on collaborating around the project management and so on. So when I wrote my dissertation on education, I worked at a refugee school in the United States. This was a school that was a pre-K to 12, middle school and high school that was focused on receiving kids who basically don't speak English that well, and so they go to this special school. But the class that I followed had kids from different places in the Middle East, Somalis, people from different places in Africa, from Tanzania. Languages expressed were like Spanish, Portuguese, Nepali, Somali, Arabic, Tanzanian. This is just one class of 20, 25 students. This is a very complicated environment, but not unlike probably a lot of the environments that you all have in your higher education institutions, where a lot of people from different places come together and try to learn something. Well, it might be English, it might be physics or whatever, but that diversity is complicated. So in the book that I wrote about my dissertation, I used a metaphor for this, the style of, some of you are probably familiar with this Ottoman style of calligraphy where the left and right kind of come together. It's the same word mirrored from left to right. I personally love this style of calligraphy, and I think it's a good metaphor for what we're trying to achieve in our work in internationalization. People, institutions, ideas coming from two, obviously more, but perspectives and coming together, meeting in the middle. It's beautiful, it's complicated, it's not easy to understand. If you can read the Ottoman calligraphy on the right easily, your Arabic is way better than mine. But I think even for native speakers, it's challenging. It's very complicated. And I think that's a beautiful metaphor for what we're trying to do at the broad level of internationalization. People coming together, doing something complicated, and having it be beautiful and exciting in the end. But it's not always easy. I also use a quote from W.E.B. Du Bois, who's one of America's premier black sociologists from earlier in the century, and he writes in his book, The Souls of Black Folk, at the end, about the experience of being different in a place. In this case, the experience of being black in the United States is hard. The history of the American Negro is a history of this strife. The longing to attain self-conscious manhood, and in the end, just trying to live without having the doors of opportunity closed roughly in your face. This then is the end of the striving, to be a co-worker in the kingdom of culture, to escape both death and isolation, to husband and use his best powers and latent genius. This, for me, is in the background, the fact of the reality of when people go to other places and they experience othering, they experience discrimination, racism. It can be minor to serious. Probably many of us walking around just the streets of Naples have had looks, questions, little things, not big, just small, but it can also be worse. And so the experience of being other and being different in places is a challenge. And I think that's underneath a lot of what we're trying to do in our work. At AUI, the challenge is ongoing, just like any place. We have, and I'm going to talk a lot about students, but it's not only about students, also faculty and staff experience this. We have historically had a lot more visiting international students, than degree-seeking students. That's starting to switch. COVID kind of stopped visiting students for a few years, but we're starting to pick back up. Normally we would have 50 to 100 out of a population of 2,000 students per semester. Now we're trying to reach 5,000 students by 2025, and our degree-seeking student population is increasing. It's still low for us. It's only like 3%. I know many of you have way higher international student populations than we do, so maybe the issues I'm going to talk about may seem trivial. But nevertheless, we are trying to have an institutional goal of 10% of our student population be international between visiting and degree-seeking students. But we have some challenges. We need to think harder about ways to integrate students into our university. We need to have better communication with our university. We need to think harder about equitable power relationships between the sort of dominant Moroccan student culture at AUI and international perspectives. And we need to have a campus culture and activities that reflect the full community. So thinking about comprehensive internationalization means it's everybody's job to do this work of ensuring that everybody is seen and recognized. But obviously there are certain groups that can do this more proactively than others. And for me, the OIP, the Office of International Programs, is one of them. We're probably the central group that is working on that. So we've been focused on that, but we've been focused more on visiting students and sponsored scholarship students. We have students from Afghanistan and different places around Africa that are there on scholarships. But we are going to be pivoting very soon to be kind of like the focal point for international students at AUI, and to really to ensure that students are getting good quality communication and support throughout their time. So this picture that I shared here is just a recent Fator. It's Ramadan, as you all know. I hosted a Fator for all the international students at AUI, and we had about half of them attend, which I thought was quite nice. And it was partly time to celebrate who we are, but also time to think about a workshop. We did a little workshop where I asked students to write down 3 things that they liked about AUI, things that they didn't like about AUI, and constructive ideas for change. So they all were working at their tables kind of in workshops, and we did it kind of quickly, but it was nice in 30 minutes. The students came up with a lot of different things, and this is not the first time that they have met. I mean, they've been thinking and working around these things for a long time, informally, but I think it was one of the first times that they were brought together by like the OIP or another organization to really think about these things. So these are just some of the pictures of some of the papers that came out. And some of the ideas that were presented to us in that was the students really felt that they needed to have proactive integration efforts. They need to have really clear communication about everything, about what do they need to bring for residency status, what do they need to bring for basic life. I've often had I have an international student handbook that I use for visiting students, but up to now the degree-seeking students haven't gotten that, so that needs to change. They need an orientation. Many of these students that came, partly because of COVID, but also because of a little bit of institutional lack of focus, had not had a real orientation, not an international student orientation. They had the orientation that was for the regular Moroccan students, which is good, but that orientation goes on a lot in Arabic and French, and it's not really tailored to them directly, so they said it was often confusing. They need, again, the communication. We need to have WhatsApp groups, email. We need to have them all know that the OIP is the place to come. And the role of English is important. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a second. Equitable power relationships is really important to these students. They do not feel that they are heard in the university, according to many of them. So they talked about things. Should we have an international student council that would have its own president and whatever? Should we have some way to communicate with the Student Government Association, other units? Should maybe the SGA save a seat for international students, something like that? And the campus culture and activities need to reflect the full community. So the students ask questions like, why can't we in the dining services have fufu on a certain day? You know, we have a lot of African students. You know, why can't we have biryani at the dining services sometimes instead of the main Moroccan food? Of course, Moroccan food is delicious. Well, I think it's delicious, and most people agree that Moroccan food is delicious, but I can appreciate that the students want that. And they want something that is reflective of their own culture. International is not just pizzas or spaghetti and hamburgers, right? They want something that reflects their own cultural background. And so dining keeps coming up as an interesting thing. The health services, you know, a lot of the nurses don't speak English that well. These are things that they would like to see change. Another organization at AUI that we just started is a new group called CARE, the Center for Awareness, Responsibility, or Responsiveness and Empowerment. I always get confused about the R because it's new. It was established for two goals. One is to basically meet Title IX, or start to meet more of the Title IX stuff about sexual harassment and misconduct. For those of you from Morocco, you might have known that there was a bit of a challenge at AUI around sexual harassment and misconduct about a year or so ago with a MEPI grant that we'd applied for. And so we had to do a lot of things to fix it, to work on that. And CARE is one of the things that's coming out of it. So this group will be doing regular events and activities to talk about sexual misconduct and discrimination, in addition to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the Fator that I just had was a co-production between CARE and the OIP, and this group will be doing more and more of this stuff over time and needing to just become more and more complicated over time. The comprehensive internationalization is very important. It's in our strategic plan, for example, that the Student Activities Office is going to try to internationalize more. What does that mean? We're not sure yet. The students themselves said, it's great that we have Moroccan performers come and entertain, but can we get some international performers and other kinds of activities? Again, dining, health service. The business office, for example, you know, the students complain that they go there and don't find people that speak English or don't deal with them. They ask, why can't we get money? AUI students have a cash wallet, like an on-campus money system that they have. And Moroccan students cannot take money off of that because it's just the rules. But the international student says, well, we don't have our parents and whatever here. Why can't we take money off of our cash wallet to pay for things that we need? I want to end with, the last thing that I think is really challenging and complicated, the issue of language and power. So all of us, I think, have multilingual campuses, but a lot of us have campuses where English is the language of instruction, right? Or it's meant to be kind of the lingua franca of the campus or something like that in some cases. The challenge that these students have talked about at AUI, because AUI is an English medium campus, but it's also Moroccan, right? We speak Darija and French, and I personally love that aspect of our campus, that it's very multilingual. But the international students said that when they go to do things that matter to them, like participate in student clubs, all the other students in the student clubs are dominated by Moroccan students. They're conducting the meetings in French or Darija or whatever. And the students feel blocked from that. Many of the international students have told me directly that they have stopped participating in clubs because they cannot understand what's going on, despite they will often say, please, can we speak English in this meeting or whatever. So this becomes, for me, I think, a really complicated thing. On the one hand, it is Darija in French, it's the language of our country, it's the language we love, it's the way we express ourselves, and we're a multilingual space, that's good. But on the other hand, when Darija is being used to conduct business in a club or something, it's exclusionary. And even if it's just one or two students, Afghan students or whoever, you know, they very subtly get pushed out of that. And that has negative consequences for them. The students have said that they stopped participating in clubs because of this, But of course, when they go to apply for graduate schools and so on, they're going to be asked, what clubs did you participate in? And it's not going to really work to say, well, I didn't participate in any because I couldn't understand what was going on, right? So it becomes a very important equity issue. Some of the students said that they applied to be RAs, to be residence assistants in the housing, and were suddenly told that, well, because you don't speak Darija, you can't really be an RA. So that's a pretty direct form of exclusion. And I don't know why, yes, I recognize it would be very important for a student to be able to deal with the other students in the language of the university, but it's a bit problematic to say you have to know Arabic and French to be an RA at a university where English is the mode of communication, the mode of education. So for me, this is really complicated because this is not something we can solve by making rules or policies. You know, we can't just say, put signs up that say English only, and I would not want that at all. But it needs to become this kind of critical and constructive dialogue between both groups, Moroccan and international, to think about the role of language and how we communicate and how are our practices being inclusive or not. And from the Moroccan side, to think how might my language practices be excluding to others, even from not meaning to be exclusive. And from the international side, you know, what could be done? Could internationals learn? Could there be programs to help them learn Darija or French or things like that to move it ahead? So I'm excited about that specific thing because it's about language and power, and it's very complicated, and I think we can make some headway there. So the next steps, you know, as AUI moves ahead, and I hope that some of the things are resonant to you. You know, we're all starting to emerge from COVID. A lot of the mobility stuff is going to start to come back, we hope. You know, we need to start to reinvigorate some of the regular programs we had, the orientations and so on. And we need to start thinking about better futures. You know, as at AUI, as our international student population grows more, you know, how are we going to start to discuss things about equity and power and language and so on to make the campus better? And just a final word, I like this quote from Marjorie Faust-Oriana talking about the trans prefix. You know, the trans prefix is important to us for a lot of things, transnationalism, of course, gender, but also things about language. She was talking here about language, you know, and I think it's interesting for us as an international community, like, what are we trying to do? And I think what she has here is a nice guide, you know. We're thinking about movement beyond borders, a transcendence or transformation of things that were being held apart or artificially constructed as separate or distinct. We're not trying for a hybridity which tries to have this equal blend of forms, nor are we trying to erase difference, but we're trying to question some of the things that are holding us apart. And this may involve dialogue. And in the end, we hope that what will emerge from all of the effort that we're trying to do is something new, a new world, a new set of ideas, new ways of relating to each other that are more peaceful, more equitable, more exciting, more human. And I'm excited to do the work with you. Thank you for being here. I don't know, we have questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about the e-wallets, and students can pay through e-wallets, right? So how we can deploy innovation through internationalization? And is it affordable to all stakeholders? Like for the university to deploy e-wallets, they have to have an infrastructure, technical infrastructure. For the students, they should be affordable, and they must know how to use applications, smartphones, etc. How we can deploy innovation through internationalization?
Yeah. If I understand your question, do you mean about like the payment and
Not only the payment, technology, how we can include it in the internationalization concept in order to make everyone involved,
right.
different stakeholders.
Well, one of the things, I think this is a good, interesting idea. One of the things to think about language, you know, it has been suggested that, you know, could some of the apps, you know, of course we can all use English, but, you know, could the students somehow use various language translating apps to to participate more in meetings or things like that. I think there have been some efforts at the university to at least make some of the services more accessible. Mainly everything is in English, but I mean, there are certain things that can still be hard for students to access, like the health center, you know, because if a student goes outside of the university for like a health emergency, then they run into language issues and so on. So yeah, I think it's important for us to think about ways to even to sign up for some of the services at the university. Some of the students find themselves a bit excluded from like tutoring sessions because, I don't know, they don't quite get signed up quickly enough. But I think it'll be good, we have to think harder about those. Yeah.
So maybe you can create a platform, simple one, a Moodle platform in which all the students can have access to it and have information about the project, internationalization, and the process, everything. Yeah. Yeah. So this is one way how to include technology or let us say, modernization into internationalization, and engaging or giving the students a whole overview of the projects.
This is good. This makes me think of, I had a meeting recently with Ahmed East. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Ahmed East. So that's a main organization that kind of does programs between America and the Middle East. And they have a nice program for their students that are going to be coming through their programs to help them learn like Darija in French. So it's a whole like online system, kind of self-paced. And I think that's something that I'm actually hoping they're going to make a proposal to AUI soon that would be like a sign up yourself, you know, 10 or something 20-hour online course about Darija and French, even teaching French and Arabic at the same time, because that's the reality of Darija. So they're going to make a proposal, and if it goes through, I think for a modest cost to the university or to the individual, they'll be able to get this nice program, and we'll be able to give it to international students, new international faculty and staff, to come before, so that they get something beforehand. Because right now, when people arrive for the orientation, you know, it's like 3 or 4 days. It's not really enough to learn language, for sure. It's not enough to learn language, and most people really struggle with that. And that will be, I think, done through YouTube and some kind of MOOC platform, or yeah.
I have a question, please. Do you have any kind of capacity building trainings or empowerment for the national students in order to prepare them for the concept of internationalization, in order to avoid incidents like the one you've mentioned about the club and students who dominate the club rather than other students?
Yes, great. I think the short answer is yes and no. So yes, we do. There is in orientation, but this is something that I think can be highlighted. We have the first year experience is something mandatory for all the students to go through. And I have to kind of sit with the coordinator to see where we could get, I know that it comes up. I know that they talk about, you know, diversity and so on, but this specific thing about language, I don't think that exactly is in there. So that'll be a good opportunity, I think, to continue to revise that. Also, like I mentioned, the stuff about sexual harassment and care, which is a dimension of this, that gets for sure put into the first year experience, and we can bring it into the orientation, and then, you know, maybe even bring it into pre-orientation or something like that. But this issue of language is complicated. What I have in mind is at least first to do a little study of the phenomenon, because I think right now it's sort of anecdotal. People talk about this, but I'd like to do a kind of a action research thing where we do some surveys or interviews or focus groups with Moroccan students about their experience in clubs and language use and so on, with international students by themselves to talk about it, and then have a shared kind of focus group to get everybody talking together about this phenomenon, and then use that information and data to spur broader conversations. Because I think it really is just about awareness. I mean, you know, just to be thinking, if I'm in a club, okay, how am I speaking Darija? Is anybody else here that doesn't speak just to make sure that people, and it's not just in the student clubs, I didn't mention, but sometimes, I don't think it's as common, but I guess some faculty from time to time will teach kind of in Jarija or French. I think it's pretty rare. That's easier to fix though, because you can tell a dean, you know, your faculty member is teaching in Jarija, and that faculty member can get in trouble, but that's the thing. Delia?
Thank you. Well, I would like to share our experience, if it can be of any help about the integration, because at UCAM we have more than 5,000 international students, since we have also international programs. Like I'm not talking only about Erasmus students, but also like people that are coming to UCAM to study there for like 4 years, for example. So what we do, we have one of the office inside the language academy of UCAM that is in charge of organizing cultural events for foreign students. It's like a workshop, for example, on flamenco or any other Spanish, any other aspects which belong to the Spanish culture. And of course, they do it at a special price for the students, for example, like €3 for a workshop. What else? They also organize excursions, visits outside the city, or tour guides, things like this. And something that is also interesting for our students is that they have access to sports events. Since UCAM has a basketball team and a football team, they can have access to their match at a special price, or sometimes even for free. And this is also a way to let them integrate to the local community and to know Spanish students, like to build a network. Then there are kind of informal initiatives like a language tandem, which are usually held outside the university, like in cafeterias, bars, or clubs in the city center. And these are, of course, these kind of initiatives are not organized by the university, but we sponsor them in the sense that we just give them visibility on our social networks, so that the students get know these initiatives too. So I don't know if it can be an idea for you to because like from my point of view, it's very important that whoever go to a different country, first thing know the culture, start speaking a little bit the language, so that this person feel to be part of the place they are gonna live for a while. So this is my humble point of view.
Thank you, yeah. I think that the Student Activities Office is going to have to start doing something similar to that, you know, having specific events for international students. Of course, my office will start to do things, but the idea of doing it like within the language center would be interesting, yeah. Wafa, I think, has a question.
That has been made by our students. They created clubs to teach Darija to international, to foreigners students, and our students who are coming from South Africa, from Cameroon, they're doing the same. So they